Hello and a very warm welcome to the Gimme A Hull Yeah Wrestling Podcast. I'm Ann and today I'm joined by ScottJay01, who has a YouTube channel which focuses on the modding of video games. How are you doing, Scott?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Great, man. How's everything holding up in these weird times?
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, it's crazy that it's getting so hot because I live so high up that I live in a real high-story block of apartments. So the heat just rises and rises. So times like this and days like this, we're having a heat wave in London at the moment.
Wow.
So I kind of just want to get outside, but yeah, stay indoors, people. Stay indoors.
I'm the same, man. I live in an apartment. The worst thing is no garden.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
You just want a barbecue or something like that, and you can't even go anywhere to have that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, outside your apartment, like where are you situated? Do you have like some greenery outside at all, like on the lower floors or anything?
I'm town centre, so I live near the marina, which is quite nice. So we've got some nice boats and stuff that you can sort of go for a walk around. But in terms of greenery, I mean, very little.
Oh no, well, I mean, I'm none. I'm on the main road.
Oh
so,
man.
Yeah, so I look outside one way and it's just like Subway and all that stuff, and then I look on the other side and it's the back of Waitrose.
So you can see the queues of toilet roll, sorry.
Well, you really can at the moment. Like now, before I go out shopping, I look through my window and be like, right, how bad's the queue?
Yeah. Well, it makes that easier at least.
Yeah, and so I can check from the front and the back. I'm like, okay, so there's this many people at the front, this many people at the back, and then I pick which side I want to go down. So,
That's cool, man. So you've got your own YouTube channel now. We're going to go into a bit of your history a bit later on. But cool. So at the minute, you're working on the video games. You're working on a lot of the old classic video games.
A lot, yeah.
After the release of 2K20. When are you going to fix that?
Never.
Is it fixable?
I wouldn't know because I didn't buy it.
Did you not?
I think the last WWE game I paid full price for was 2K16.
That's really interesting, man, because you're such a big fan of the games. And
yeah.
Yeah, cool. Oh, that's really interesting. So the games that you're working on SmackDown, SmackDown 2, Know Your Role, Here Comes the Pain, Shut Your Mouth.
Bring it. Basically,
just bring it, yeah.
Every SmackDown up to 2008. So we're going from the first 5 SmackDowns, then the first 4 SmackDown versus Raws, WWE 13, both Xbox Raw games, and all the GameCube games. That's a lot. That's a lot to do.
Oh, you are working on all the GameCube games?
Yeah, I am. I think a month ago I just put up a video of Day of Reckoning 2.
Okay, cool. So what's the coding difference like? Because obviously most of them games were PlayStation-based or Xbox-based. GameCube, completely different coding software, I would assume.
It's completely different tool set, completely different community who don't work on the wrestling games themselves. So you have to go through like people who mod Smash Brothers and things like that, because you'll be like, okay, well, where do I even start to get these files? Because like in the Day of Reckoning 2 video, I show off a different Hulk Hogan. I show off Maven, who was cut from the game because he was released right before the game's release,
right? And
things like that. And even to get access to those models to put them into a retail Day of Reckoning 2, just so I could capture it, was such a task. Like I had to literally speak to like 5 or 6 different people in the Smash Brothers community for them to point me in the right direction. Even that, it was a lot of trial and error.
Wow. So you're obviously one of the holy grails is No Mercy.
Yep.
Is that something that you can work on in the future?
Well, I look at No Mercy all the time because it is my number 1 or number 2 favorite wrestling game. It goes back and forth between that and SmackDown 2 because that year of wrestling is my favorite in the history of wrestling. So I think personally, back from Backlash 2000 to WrestleMania 17 is the best year in the Federation. Okay. So like that whole roster appeals to me so much. But there's just so many people doing great stuff on No Mercy that I would want to do something very different. And then thinking about what I would want to do to it, I feel like I would probably finish by the time I'm like 47 years old. So I don't think it's going to happen.
So for people that don't know you, what you're doing is you're taking these games and creating what you describe as a definitive edition.
Yeah. So originally this started. So how I got into doing this would be I would look at it and be like, okay, playing Here Comes the Pain. I love the grapple system and I love things like that. But at the same time, SmackDown Shut Your Mouth's roster was better in my opinion. Like, yes, there are some additions in Here Comes the Pain that are excellent, but if you could take the guys from SmackDown Shut Your Mouth and put them in Here Comes the Pain, that would be awesome, because you get characters that were cut, such as Hogan and Jeff Hardy, but you'd also get other characters like, Billy Gunn, Hardcore Holly, things like that. So I started doing that, and the reason I started doing that was because when, let's see, I mean, I've been buying these games since even before the SmackDown series, probably since the Super NES and Mega Drive days.
A long time, yeah.
A long time. I may have had an NES wrestling game as well. I'm not even sure. But when, at the time, like, I really got into wrestling was probably around 97. Because before I was just super into, I guess, martial arts and karate. And at the time I thought, I'm going to grow up and be like I want to write and direct my own martial arts movies. That was
it's cool
my
ambition
thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was doing martial arts from the time I was like, I think 6 was when I first went to a karate school, and then I went to taekwondo and things like that. And I thought martial arts is my life. That's what I'm going to be doing.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and then we get to 1997, and I see wrestling. I'd always watch wrestling, but like it was, I love the pre-packages, but the actual matches, a lot of them just seemed too hokey for me. And I was like, as someone that loves, martial arts and things, I didn't feel that they were intense and what I wanted it to be.
No.
And then I think 97, 98, around the time Austin and Rock and people started coming up, I was like, oh, this is everything to me, throw everything else in the trash. I want to do this forever. And yeah, that was it. I was hooked. And I started, like I wanted to wrestle. That was my life's goal. It was, I want to wrestle. I want to be a wrestler. So through my adolescent years of just working out and eating, all I would do was play wrestling video games, because I was obsessed with them. But over time, especially when you get to something like 2K up to 2K16, you just see them removed more and more and more things, whether it be movesets, whether it be characters, whether it be arenas, features, season mode, just features that you should probably have to justify a purchase of $60.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. And funny enough, when I was in trying to get into wrestling at the time, I had a lot of friends who were also trying to get into either combat sports or into pro wrestling. And, they were way worse off than me. They could only like buy 2 games a year. So the guys that were American, they would buy like Madden and SmackDown.
Yeah.
And the guys who were British would buy either FIFA and Pro Evo and one of the two of those and SmackDown.
Yeah.
And then like when we get to, I think probably about SmackDown versus Raw 09, seeing the disappointment on their faces that they spent like the 2 games a year they bought, one of them won't even last them a week, let alone a year, because like there was no season mode. There was the feature set was gone. They even charged you for like, I think they charged you just for Mask Kane.
Really?
In that game. I think that was the DLC. Like Kane in his like 2002 outfit or 2001 outfit, he should have been alternate attire. And
in theory, they did that with the modern game with the Fiend. I think he
was.
Yes,
exactly.
It might have been day one, but it was DLC exclusive.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. Nobody on the current roster should be a downloadable purchase. No, if they're not admitted, it should be down to the fact that they didn't sign a contract or something like that, and a real excusable reason. Not we're going to charge you more because we know you'll pay it.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of get the sort of NXT thing now, which is slightly different now from what it used to be. And that if you had an NXT pack of future stars, I can sort of understand that. But no, to say people like Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, isn't going to be in the game, you have to download it, is madness. Sorry, Scott. I think I've just lost your sound, man.
Okay.
Oh, and you're back now.
I'm back now. Okay.
Sorry, dude.
It's fine. The thing with the NXT people being sort of the Future Stars packs and things like that being, I guess, acceptable at the time was NXT was a very new entity.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't know how things were going to be handled. You didn't know if the little network show was going to be sort of inclusive in the video games and, you know, be part of sort of the WWE continuity.
Yes.
But they've had about how many years has it been now? Since 2013, right? Or 2014?
Yeah, quite a few years now, yeah.
Yeah, so they've had a long time to figure that out and be like, right, if you were on a WWE roster as a contract, you are in this video game, whether you like it or not. You just get paid a flat fee. You know, that should just be a rule because you can't punish your fan base like that. You know?
No, well, it is, yeah. But one of the interesting things that you're going back when you're looking at these definitive editions, and what I really respect about the work that you're doing, is you're really focusing in on the era. So it's not about including everything that you can into the game. It's about including what was either omitted from the game, and you do a lot of research towards getting that information. Can you explain how you choose to do that, and what the choices that you've got to make from that? Because I assume the times, like Shawn Michaels' brown pants. Was it Just Bring It? You know, a lot of people don't like them. Here Comes the Pain.
A lot of people hate the brown pants.
A lot of people hate them, but you're keeping it in. So can you just sort of go through why that is and what you want?
He wins the world title in that match where he's wearing that attire. So you have to have it in because it is a moment. One of the things I've tried to go back and do is for example, with SmackDown Shut Your Mouth now, I'm just about to drop a preview of an update. I've put a bit of it on Patreon already, where I'm showing attire updates, and they are based around the full year of 2002. So, not 2002, from the invasion of 2001 all the way to just after WrestleMania of 2002. So with that, I'll go back and I'll watch footage and be like, right, what are moments that a certain wrestler had, like a career moment, a career-defining moment, career-defining matches, things like that. Streetwear has to be included. So it's like, okay, what promo did they simply knock it out the park with? So, for example, I had to have Rock in the Get Ready shirt, and I had to have Hulk Hogan in the NWO shirt and the black jeans because... obviously, what do you say about one more match with the Great One? So you could reenact
iconic moments of that era.
Yeah, exactly. So stuff like that. And then on the flip side, I've got like Triple H in the Screw the Rules, Play the Game t-shirt, which is the SmackDown after the draft, where Hogan comes out in the red and yellow and is donning the full Hulkamania streetwear. And I was like, well, that has to be in as well. So we've got to have two street gears, and we have to have ring gear to match sort of those matches, because you have to have the Mania 18 match, but you also have to have the match where he wins the title at Backlash.
Yeah, of course,
yeah. So you know, it's a lot that goes into that, and then you know, so it's just I'll build like, I don't know, about 8 to 10 attires per guy most of the time. So with say SmackDown Shut Your Mouth or SmackDown versus Raw 2006, which I'm currently showing off at the moment. You know, I've got things like, I think I've done like 4 or 5 Chris Benoit attires with the For Real logo from when he was world champion, because he had so many different color variants of it.
Yeah.
And then it was like, right, well, which ones do you have? And I was like, okay, so the red has to be in because he loses to Randy Orton, and Randy Orton becomes the youngest world champion in history, right? So in that respect, then Randy Orton has to have that sort of pale orange tights, trunks that he had, to complement that. So those are 2 that you have to have. And then with Benoit, it's like, okay, so what is the next big match he has? So I'll look at that. And then with Randy Orton, it's what is his next moment? And that was, well, he lost the title. So it would be the match with him and Triple H the following month. Okay. So it's a lot to go into, like, but saying that, then I've posted a preview of like, okay, here is the cutting room floor of attires. So like, you'll have Orton at Survivor Series 2004. You'll have Orton when he fought Edge for the IC title, which was an incredible match at Vengeance 2004. Things like that, which didn't necessarily make the actual release. But I'm like, okay, so we're going to do sort of mini updates where if you don't want those attires, I'm gonna sort of put monthly updates where it's like, here's 2 alternates, here's 2 alternates.
And that's great, and giving people what they want with whilst at the same time building that era.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's all about doing the era justice, you know. So I always try and think, okay, moments and matches. Those are it's the key rule of the thing, because once you get that down, you see that a lot of people were like, that was never in a game. I'm like, yeah, because I think when they ship games, they try and go with something a guy has worn as much as possible, so it's as in date as possible.
Yeah,
which makes sense, you know. But obviously, I'm trying to be like, okay, well, what are the cool stuff that we never got, which we'll never get?
Well, I think there's also an element of now we're looking at it with experience as well, and what they thought was popular, based on a limited development cycle. They've had to choose that. So, like, and I use the modern days because I'm more into it in the modern day, or I sort of know more about it. But the Finn Balor one would always be like the SummerSlam would be the latest demon that they could get in, because they wouldn't have time to create that afterwards. So you're wearing a lot of hats, man. I mean, you're talking about artistry. What a word! You're being an artist, right? And you're also being a coder, and you're putting stuff in, and all this sort of madness. How do you like? That's a lot of hats to be wearing, dude.
Try managing a YouTube channel and a Patreon, and having to make, I guess, separate content for both video and written content. It's just it is crazy. I didn't think it would be this much work. I kind of thought when I first started this, was like, oh yeah, it's a lot of work, but I'm sure you just turn on a camera and it's fine, and it really isn't. Like,
it's not, no.
Like you look at YouTubers in a completely different light when you do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's such a demanding job. I mean, you have to write a script, you have to get your lighting correct, you have to edit, you have to hit all the points. You can't, it's so much work. It's, it takes hours and hours just to put 1 10-minute video together.
Absolutely, yeah. We have the same on this channel. If we're doing a review of an old WrestleMania or what have you, we have to watch that WrestleMania. That's 3 hours. We have to go and research the history of what was happening at the time. That's another 2 or 3 hours, and it all adds up until you've spent 12 hours on this video that's watched by 5 people.
Oh, I mean, I know. I mean, that's heartbreaking. I've had the same sort of thing when I was starting up. I was like, am I going to make this like 40-minute thing, which I ended up cutting because I thought it was too long. This was for the first episode.
Yeah. And
I was like, how many people are even going to watch this? Because as you say, it's about specific eras of those games, right? So it'll be, SmackDown 2 will be literally the year 2000. So that's 20 years ago now, which is nuts to me. But, it's 20 years ago. How many people are going to go crazy and watch that? There's all this work.
People's lives have changed since then.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean,
we've held on to it, but not everyone has.
Well, exactly. I mean, wrestling in and of itself is it's a much smaller bubble than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And the people, I get loads of people constantly asking me, oh, will you do modern superstars? And I'd be like, yeah, I'd happily do sort of a modern roster video game, but it would have to be in the confines of a modern video game. You know?
Okay.
Because I don't see the value in trying to piece together something like say if I were to take Finn Balor, because you brought him up.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to piece together sort of a character and put him in a game like, say, SmackDown 2, just for example, or SmackDown Just Bring It, or something like that.
Yeah.
And you won't have an entrance motion. A moveset is not going to be the exact moveset he does. You're not going to have the taunts. And it's the exact thing that got me doing this in reverse, because I remember the reason I started doing this was while I was on injury, and I'd never complained about the wrestling games to a major extent before that, because I had a lot more disposable income. So if the wrestling game sucked, unlike a lot of my guys who could only buy 1 or 2 games a year, it was what it was. I could go back to the previous year's game, but there was tons of other great games I could play.
Yeah.
So no big deal.
Yeah.
But after I broke my neck and didn't have sort of a stable income, and then my mother caught lupus, and my other parents had a fall, and she became immobile. So disposable income was super tight. And the only game I bought that year was, I think, 2K15. And I just looked at it and I was like, man, you know, you have Stone Cold in here, but you don't have any of his moves. You know, you've just pieced together moves from modern superstars. Like there wasn't a stunner where you can give someone a stunner and they fall to their knees.
Really? Wow. So no cutters, no nothing.
No. So, you know, like you now look at that in reverse. If I put Finn Balor in one of these older games, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to have Finn Balor with sort of a makeshift moveset.
Yeah.
You know,
which won't necessarily work.
Yeah, so I would be like, no, I want to do it in a modern game, in maybe even in a new engine, you know, like I would be over the moon to do that. And it's, you know, because I think a lot of people think I hate modern wrestling, that's why I don't do it. And that's not true. It's just, I think, you know, these games are set in a certain time period, and that's what you have to work with.
Yeah.
Or at least I do.
Yeah,
you know?
no, I agree with you, and I think it's a really definite choice that you've made, and I think it's interesting that you've gone with that choice. And it's not the right choice; it's a choice, and that's good. And I think that's what makes me interested in the work that you're doing. So you talked a little bit there about your neck injury. A while ago, you was looking at being a wrestler yourself, or you was a wrestler yourself, as well as the sort of history of your Taekwondo. Did you say it was?
Yeah, so when I was, probably about 5, I loved martial arts. So I was into, I guess, you know, everything a kid of that age was into, right? So like comic books, martial arts. Fighting, yes.
Fighting and mud.
Yes, I love to get my hands dirty and fight. You know, and that was the thing. So I enrolled in karate school when I was like 6. And then went on to do Taekwondo as well. I watched pro wrestling, but, you know, I loved stuff in pro wrestling. Like, you've seen Ultimate Warrior and Jake the Snake tricking him into doing his, like, crazy training regime, right? Where he buries him and everything in the sand.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, right. So I loved all those backstage things.
Yeah.
But match-wise, it wasn't for me, because I didn't feel it was like crazy aggressive, or, you know, it just wasn't something that I had like total passion in.
No. Okay.
And then come 1997, probably late 97, I'm watching Raw, and, you know, I see Steve Austin. I'm like, oh, this is for me. You know, wrestling had turned into something that, like, exactly what I wanted out of life. You know, like it went from, and then as the years went on, I think especially around like 2000, like this was my everything. You know, I loved wrestling at that point. Like I think I wouldn't do anything other than wrestle. I saved all my money, and I bought a home gym because I couldn't afford to go to the gym. So I was like, right, well, I'm going to buy a gym myself and sell everything in my bedroom, which I did. I sold like all my video games.
Wow.
Sold everything, just so I could buy a bench and some other weight equipment and tons of free weights. And I just trained till I could be old enough to go to a wrestling school.
Cool.
And, you know, like I get so not envious, but I get so like, oh, if only I was younger now, because, like, you know, we're talking 2003 when I was able to go to wrestling school, and wrestling school in England in 2003 is very far and few between, and some of them weren't particularly great.
It's very different these days.
Yeah. Whereas now, you know, I mean, I think there's so many drop kicks are still going, right? I think they are.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So like you have places like that. Obviously, you know, you've got tons of really cool places. But in London at the time, I mean, there was a couple of tryout classes I went to, which I didn't particularly gel with. And I think that was because as a kid, I think you sort of envision what the performance center is now.
Yes, yeah.
You envision a facility.
Sterile.
Yeah, you envision sort of a real. All right, I've just eaten and trained my whole last 5 years. I'm ready to be an athlete.
Yeah.
And then you go into like a sort of a, well, for me it was a concrete football gym, I suppose. It was like a PE
A sports hall.
yeah, so it was like that during the week.
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
and then it was like this real cruddy little ring.
And when you get there, you've got to put away the chairs from the AA meeting that's just been happening.
Oh, stuff like that all the time. And so like there was stuff like that, and I did that for a while, and then I was like, oh, I just want. I had a real problem because like I felt like at the time, there was like a lot of guys were horsing around doing like the suck it sides, because obviously that was very current back then. It was very in.
Yeah.
So they were doing all that stuff, and I was like, man, I came here to wrestle, and then I found the British Fight Academy. I think it's closed now, but it was basically like Buckets of Blood. Is Buckets of Blood still open?
I'm not sure, man. I'm really not
okay.
sure.
So what the Fight Academy and Buckets of Blood are they're kind of like mini performance centers almost. So you can go there, you can learn to wrestle, you can study MMA, and you can study to box. And that was where I went in the end, because I felt so much more comfortable there.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then I started trying to wrestle for free for shows and things like that, because obviously it's now what, 2004, 2005 at this point.
Putting your reps, yeah.
Yeah, you're doing your reps, and while doing those reps, I ended up getting, not basically, a guy shot me to the ropes, kicked me in the gut, which this was all part of our little plan, and then hoisted me up for a powerbomb, but he didn't hoist me all the way up. So I assumed we would do a retake where I would, get off him, and we'd go back into the same routine.
Maneuver, yeah.
Yeah. Instead, he just went full force to drop me, and that was that.
Oh dear! And that was when you broke your neck.
That was that. I just went bang right there, and I've had, and that was, I didn't think that was the end. I kind of thought at the time, I was like, okay, this sucks, but it'll be fine. And then, as I said earlier, while I was healing, my mum caught lupus, and it was severe lupus. Okay. Like her skin was shedding. Oh, and and that was happening. And then my other parent, she had a fall and she lost mobility. So it then became this thing of, okay, I'm going to be spending I spent like the next 8 years of my life being a carer,
Yeah.
Because that was just what you had to do.
You look after the people you love. Yeah, of course.
Exactly. They would do it for you. So you do it for them, and then, like I said,
that's all happening while you're doing your own rehabilitation as well. I mean, that's much to sort of manage.
Yeah. I mean, it was a challenging time, and that's just how I fell into this, because I suddenly realized what my friends years prior were talking about when they were like, man, I only had like a certain amount of money, and I bought this game, and this isn't in. There's no season mode. There's no real multiplayer things like we used to play on SmackDown 2. Things like that, and I would be like, but it's no big deal, dude. The next one will be better. And then when you're in the position of, this was my only $50, and I just spent it on this game, and X, Y, and Z isn't here, and the things that the things that are selling points of this game, such as say, if you're going to say 2K16, you sell that on Steve Austin, but then if you go through his moveset, Steve Austin probably doesn't have an accurate moveset.
No.
So you're thinking like, okay, but here's where THQ and 2K went wrong. And I don't blame 2K, because I think it was the people that migrated from THQ into 2K continuing the habits sort of that they had acquired from THQ, which was basically after, I think, SmackDown versus Raw, we get to a point where they start moving the creation of moves, so the move animations, away from Japan. So up until then, Ukes used to hand animate all the moves. Okay. So they'd look just like the wrestler did on TV. But then THQ wanted to do motion capture, so they clearly moved it to the US and started, getting independent wrestlers to come in and motion capture the moves instead. That's all fine. But then they decided to start removing some of those old moves. So say, for example, Austin and Rock's movesets, right?
Yeah.
Here's a whole bunch of moves that are old. We're going to remove them all. So you would think, as the license holder for WWE, your job would be straight away, okay, well, we have this license, so we have to make sure everybody under that license that's in this game has all their moves corrected, especially if we remove them.
Yeah, and is represented as the WWE want them to be shown, one would assume.
Well, absolutely. And then instead you got, no, they didn't do that. They would start adding a load of independent wrestler moves. And I think that's awesome to have that as extra, because Ukes did that as extras, but they were extras, So yeah. you would have complete movesets for the main roster on television at that time, and whoever your legends are. But you'd also have these cool extra movesets. But instead there was quite a big trade-off, and it was like, okay, so people I knew who didn't necessarily play with the current roster of people would be very disappointed sort of in, I guess, the legend selection, and then say even if they had the legend they wanted, the moves wouldn't be correct, or the music or the Titantron or something wouldn't be right.
Yeah.
And then, even to this day, I'm getting people, who are super familiar with the current product, telling me, oh, well, Shinsuke Nakamura doesn't have this sort of unique suplex or elbow drop or thing that he does. And I just think, well, we never had this issue 20 years ago. Everybody had their unique variations of moves.
No.
So everybody plays differently, because at the end of the day, I know they want it to quote unquote play differently, but if it looks different, it is matching what the audience essentially wants, which is a simulation of television.
Yeah, well, that's where they're going for. I mean, but then I'd also say like the older games, and it's really interesting to hear you talk about how instead of keeping up with the series and being disappointed, you decided to go back to what you loved as a child instead, or younger man, and go, this is what I want to work on to make as great as possible. I think that's really interesting. I think another thing that's really off-putting about the games is the camera angles. Like you play these old games and they felt energetic. It felt like you was part of a match as opposed to just a simulation.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that is the motion capture, because I think when you motion capture a move, unless you get the specific person. So if you were to get Shinsuke Nakamura to come in and do his own motions, they'd probably be a lot more lifelike and hard hitting than I suppose they are with the motion capture with him not doing them. Now, I don't know if Shinsuke Nakamura has done motion capture for his own moves. I don't know, because I don't play as Shinsuke Nakamura, but
no,
I don't think I own a game with him in it. Or maybe he was in that Future Stars pack, actually. I remember they did charge crazy money for him, didn't they?
Potentially, I think he was in
Jackson Apollo Crews.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. So I think one of the interesting things that you sort of saying there is like, WWE are producing this game that a lot of people are spending hard-earned money on, and in days with Shut Your Mouth and Here Comes the Pain and all that sort of stuff, we had a game that we could play for a year and enjoy for a year, and it'd become an investment that was worthwhile, whereas these are now sort of maybe throwaway at times. But again, if WWE are spending so much money on that and they've got the wrestlers there, why aren't they using them to motion capture these moves?
I mean, motion capture is sort of just one of the many problems with that series.
Okay.
Now, I mean, with as far as WWE not sending their guys out, and instead outsourcing it with 2K, maybe that will change now, because obviously the people that were there before with THQ, they had a certain way of doing it, and they had a certain list of people to come in and get motion capture. And I think I played 2K18, and the motion capture had got better, because I think they changed. I think it was Eli Drake came in and did a lot of that stuff, and it was really good. Yeah. But I think as a whole, you should probably just be like, right, well, if say, I think I'm not sure where 2K Studio is, if it's in California or if they are close to Florida. But either way, I think, they could instead send some of these guys off on a day and be like, right, go get your stuff captured in. And then for I suppose legends that aren't with us anymore, you go back to sort of traditional hand animated stuff to sort of get it like classic matches of theirs, rather than getting someone who might not be able to emulate it properly.
No, yeah. But then a guy's going to be able, surely, I mean, I would assume, but a guy built similar to Austin is going to, because of the sort of passion for Austin, is going to be able to motion capture that a bit easier and play that character a bit easier because of the exposure they've had to him, as opposed to someone like Jack Gallagher.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I really think that there are just some people who, if they're super fans of somebody, they'll know how to do a stunner in several different ways.
Yeah.
So they'll be like, right, well, when Taker and Kane take it, they're still standing. They just bounce on their feet. Whereas if it's The Rock, you'll get sort of a spinning oversell. If it's Kurt Angle, he'll drop to his knees and then drop to his back. Mm-hmm. So you end up with multiple move variations, which is, that's how these games should be at this point. It shouldn't be. It's crazy that these were things that were already thought of and in the video games in 2001, 2002. You had multiple stunners, multiple pedigrees, multiple rock bottoms, or what have you.
Yeah.
And that should sort of still be the thing today. It shouldn't be we just have a generic one and that's the one.
Yeah. I feel like we've gone slightly more into new school, because I think it's just a frustrating thing to even talk about. It's you see what they're doing and you go, why?
Well, yeah, you do. I mean, I look at, say, something like SmackDown 2, and for $60 you got a game with title history, which was absent from video games up until 2K took it over again. And then you look at, they have a contendership list. So they have like tons of historical statistics. They have a season mode, which is up to 4 players. So anyone can jump in and play at the time. I mean, my buddies and I used to play that a ton because it's so much fun. And then you have like a roster full of characters. You can go into create a superstar and create even more attires and things like that. And I just feel like, okay, most of that stuff was taken out for about 10 years of this game's life and has only just made its way back in.
Yeah.
And okay, so we've now got to the point where we're almost back to the PlayStation 1. And it's like, we should be so much further. We shouldn't even be paying for, say, a standard video game this year and then being like, right, there'll be a different one next year. What these games should turn into is a live service game, which is at the start of the generation, we buy a disc. That disc has a certain number of superstars, certain number of divas, certain number of legends, right? Mm-hmm. We load that on, that's fine. And then we have updates throughout the year. Then the following year, and throughout the year, they update the attires and whatnot in DLC features. But then the following year, what should happen is it is a big update. So if you have the original disc, or the original file if you're on PC or whatever, you just download the new updates, which gives you an updated roster, but you keep all the people you paid for as well from the previous game.
Yeah.
And we keep doing this and so on and so forth, so that you ultimately don't lose anything. You just get more moves, more arenas, more characters. And as long as you have hard drive space, you can keep going.
Expanding,
That's sort of how these games should move forward, instead of we're still doing this thing of, I mean, wasn't it, was it 2K19 that Tommaso Ciampa wasn't in and he was the NXT champion?
That's right, yeah. I mean, I believe that was, it was the same with Nikki Cross. I believe that was contract issues.
So
but it's still not acceptable. It should, that sort of thing should be worked out.
It isn't. But then luckily, I mean, it's not ideal, but if we were running on a service game, they would have been, well, Tommaso would have been in the, I don't know about Nikki Cross, but he would have been in the previous game, right? So you could at least update him to what he's wearing now and give him the title and keep going.
Yeah.
But for people that just say are on base consoles and they just buy that disc, there's no Tommaso for them.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point. So going back to the modded stuff that you do, How do people get these mods, and what resources do they need to be able to get into this? You know, is it something you can do on a... So is it something that they can do on a PS4? Obviously, probably not. Or is it something where they need the original console? Is it something where they need the original disc, or is emulation a thing?
They don't need the original disc. Basically, everything I do, I make. Funny enough, my stuff does work on a PS4, but you have to have homebrewed it. So, okay. Yeah, so it will work if you've got your PS4 playing PS2 games, then this will work on there. Yeah, if you have a PS2, it will work on that, or a basically whatever the console, whatever the game is made for originally, it will work on that. You just have to have either a soft or hard modification on that. Obviously, PC emulators work and run everything.
Okay.
I think the only exception with that will be the original Xbox stuff, because there isn't a working emulator for the original Xbox yet that can run the original Raw games.
Okay. And Microsoft, what like you putting that on your system?
Yeah, so with that you'll have to have a modded Xbox.
Okay.
And I think that'll be the only way to play that, because I'm not even sure if the Xbox 360 will run those games properly.
So the mods that you work on these games, they work across all of them as well. Do they differ slightly for you when you're actually sort of working on them?
In what way do you mean?
So so if you was to change the attire of Shawn Michaels in Here Comes the Pain, do you have to do? Does that translate? Is that one base thing that you're working on, and then you put it out into all these different forms, including like emulation on PC or ready for the PS2 or PS4 or what have you?
Well, luckily it is all one file. So once that HBK is done, and say I put him in the Here Comes the Pain, how you play the Here Comes the Pain is up to you. So it'll work on all platforms. Okay. So like one time, the struggle is sort of the amount of games I'm doing. Like I think 2 weeks ago I put out the SmackDown versus Raw definitive edition. Okay. And it had like I think Goldberg and Lesnar and all this other stuff that was never in the original base game. And I've been doing sort of on Patreon, I've been doing a SmackDown countdown, because I sort of run my Patreon as a interactive magazine. So it's kind of like I'll do like a daily update or every 2 days an update with sort of a roster reveal, a tire reveal, arena reveal, maybe a video of a soundtrack, something like that, you know, or new moves or features. And SmackDown vs. Raw was out for probably about 6-7 days, and people were already like, right, so when is 2006 coming? And I'm like,
wow, man, demand.
Like, you know, soon.
I mean, it's really interesting, because what you've done is, especially by putting yourself on Patreon, which is great, and you've got a lot of patron support, and that's really great, and people should go to your Patreon that want to support you, and if they can, you know. And one of the things that you've done by doing that, because obviously you are very respectful of finances. You've sort of spoke a few times now about how when you had these games, it'd mean you could only have 2 games, and you respect people's finances. Yep. And you've now put yourself into a position where people are paying for a service, and you've got these deadlines now, which
oh, I know.
which has turned this in from a sort of a thing you was doing when you was at home for your own enjoyment into something that you're giving to a wider community. How's that pressure been, and how do you manage that sort of working on all these games?
It sort of happened. Well, I mean, when I started doing this, I didn't think this would be sort of the only thing I did, because I showed off Here Comes the Pain, like I think 5 years ago now. Okay. That was when it first started. And you know, it got, obviously, because I didn't do it on YouTube at first, so it got sort of an okay, lukewarm response at best. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna keep working on this for the next few years, and then I'm gonna do a few more wrestling games, and I think I'm gonna then just do video games in general, and you know, start a YouTube channel and start talking more about video games and cut content. Because I mean, how I got some of the preview builds and E3 builds and footage and things like that was my first job. Well, my second job, if you want to count that. My first proper job was I was an intern for a PS2 magazine in England.
Okay.
So that was when I was like just turned 18. So when they used to get preview builds and things like that, they wouldn't necessarily want to. Wrestling was sort of almost on a decline at that point, you know, like it wasn't as hot as it was a couple of years prior.
Yeah.
So they would be busy playing like the new Grand Theft Auto, and when it came to wrestling, it was like, okay, yeah, we'll play it when it's time for review. But if they needed like, you know, screenshots taken and things like that, have me do it because I'm the wrestling guy.
Because
I love
you're
wrestling.
the fan, yeah.
Exactly. So you know, I would do that. But a lot of these things that got sent into those magazines, which is like gold dust now, they would go in the trash. Like they would, because obviously, you know, they're just for preview purposes, and nobody cared about that stuff enough, so they just bin them all.
Wow.
And obviously, it's only now that video game preservation and stuff like that has become a real thing.
Heritage,
yeah. So like I would, you know, when it came to like some stuff like Dragon Ball, wrestling, Metal Gear, things like that, I would be like, well, I'm just going to take this stuff home because I don't want to bin it, you know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, I would be like, oh, but this isn't in the, like, for example, there's like several move variations that are in preview builds that aren't in the main game, or attires and things like that. So I'm like, right, I gotta take this stuff and put it in the actual game and make it better like that, because this is how I wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I thought, okay, this is going to be a very niche thing for a very, very small audience. And then I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to do YouTube and see how it goes. And then it just, I mean, it didn't blow up because like I've got like what I think 2,000, you know, I've got like 10,000 views on the first Here Comes the Bane video.
But that's great, man. I mean, for a first video, that's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's taken time to get there, but like I didn't think it would even get like 1,000, you know.
Yeah, so, but for such a niche thing, and this is really niche, to be able to get them sort of views, and that's all testament to yourself, because, you know, I found your channel and I watched everything straight through, because not only was it interesting to hear about, you present it in a way that's so accessible and enjoyable to listen to.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Compliments.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, like I didn't think it would take off the way it did. So now, deadline wise, it's crazy because I'm trying to do stuff and be like, hi, well, if you want this to be as good as the last one, then you have to sort of give me a bit of time to make it good.
The time I need, yeah.
Yeah. So with 2006, I wasn't going to show that off at all until probably about August. But then the pandemic happened, and I felt sort of almost responsible. Like, you know, I had a lot of people being like, well, I'm not canceling my Patreon to you. And I'm like, well, then
that's nice, man.
That's awesome. But, you know, the next release is SmackDown versus Raw, which was, you know, this was April. So it was like that wasn't coming until May. And I was like, okay, so what can I do? So then I thought, all right, what if I start showing stuff that's a little further down the road, but I do like almost a daily update, or if I can't do a daily update, every other day, and, you know, try and manage it like that. So it has become a double-edged sword, because it was really good and really popular, and I'm still doing it. But obviously at the same time, I'm getting like, but this is nearly done, isn't it? I'm like, no, it's not. It's not nearly done. It's, you know,
it's such a difficult thing to manage, I'd assume.
Yeah, well, I mean, that, and you're one person, you know.
Yeah, of course. And that's mad that you're doing all this, you've taken on this massive project by yourself.
Yeah, so with like 2006, for example, I showed like the latest attire 2 days ago, which is an attire for Booker T. And I was like, well, that brings our total attires to 37. And I was like, and the base game had only 4.
Wow.
So
that's so much work, man.
It's a lot of work. And then you think like, okay, there was a whole team in Japan and a whole team in China working on that game.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, so you're kind of like, right, this is why it needs a bit of time, you know, because I want to do as many attires as possible. And, you know, like people didn't expect for me to be like, well, the Bastion brothers have a secondary attire, and this is when they won the SmackDown tag team titles.
Right.
You know, because they're like, well, it's just the Bashams, and it was like, no, well, they were champions. There's their attire.
Part of it, yeah, of course,
yeah. So, but yeah, pressure is it's good, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I want to do this, and then every time I think I'm going to get some downtime to do something else for YouTube, like say I've got a Dragon Ball video that I've been talking about it since last year and being like, oh, it's in editing, and it's still in editing because I never get the time to look at it. No. Because I wanted to sort of make it sort of a video game restoration channel and then do reviews and do other things, and I was like, I can't fall into the trap of being just wrestling. And I fall into the trap where I am just wrestling.
But at the same time, it's become very popular, and the people that you're doing it for are supporting you, are enjoying it that much that they're supporting you financially.
I mean, I couldn't ask for better people, to be honest. Like,
it's amazing.
I've also made friends. You know, like there are people that, you know, I've got on Zoom or phone conversations with some of them, you know, for hours at a time.
That's great.
You know, people just call to check in on me and say, hey, you getting enough sleep?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. That's
stuff
nice.
Like that. And
You've really formed this community.
Yeah, which I think, you know, is awesome. So, you know, going from I don't want to just do wrestling to now I'm just like, I can just do wrestling. It's fine.
Yeah. But then in the future that might change, and I'm sure that the people that are with you will embrace that change with you, or they won't. But you'll at the same time introduce yourself to a new set of people. But there will be people that carry on with you.
I mean, maybe there's people who are now at the moment being like, hey, I'll join Patreon if you review Raw and AEW and SmackDown.
Oh wow, dance monkey dance.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, and this wasn't just like one person. I've had like several of these. Yeah. So, and I'm just thinking that's a lot of television to watch. Because Raw is what, 3 hours. AEW and SmackDown are another 2, and then if they want NXT as well, that's just. I don't think my brain could handle that much wrestling.
Well, obviously, our channels sort of does a lot of the review stuff. But again, like to do it weekly, we could do it, but we couldn't work elsewhere, and that's the issue.
Well, yeah, I mean, you'd literally, because you'd be needing to put out a video almost every other day, right?
Basically, and you're looking at, which is fine if people enjoy it enough and support you, but actually it's a really difficult thing to sort of, it's a big step in commitment to be able to do that. So I respect anyone that does that on any sort of scale.
Me too. And I especially respect people that manage to stay positive while doing it. Yeah. Because it's so easy to be like, you know, oh, I'm doing this again, you know, like this was bad, this was bad, this was bad. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're in such an amazing position.
Yeah.
So like people that stay positive during those wrestling reviews every single week are just, you know, I know, especially knowing how hard it is to make YouTube content, it's just commend them no end.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? So going back to difficulties, because one of the difficulties that you have when working with this is you are very heavily dyslexic. So what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is how you overcome that, and how you don't use that as an excuse to not do something, and you're able to continue doing what you do.
Well, I mean, you know, it is. Sometimes you beat yourself up because it's something that doesn't go away. So I'll be working on something, or I'll even be writing back a message, and I'll look, and there are words, all the correct words are there, but they're all over the place. So they're sort of like ats will be before the placement it's meant to be, and things like that. It'll jumble. Yeah. So it's not making any coherent sense. And it's so weird because when you're doing that at the time, you see it the way you speak it. You know, you don't see anything wrong with it till later. You're like, damn it. But when it comes to doing stuff like modding, there are several times where I've done stuff and I am just like, well, why isn't it working? And then I'm beating myself up over it. And probably something that should take about 10 minutes can sometimes take about 2 hours, because you just, you know, you need to sort of step back and be like, okay, delete it, start again. You know, because you know you've done it wrong, and you know there's no point, you know, going back and looking for where the mistake is, because sometimes that can take too long, you're looking, and unfortunately, just because of how things are, you can't visibly see it. Like I can't sometimes. I mean, even tweets. Like I'll check my tweets over like 5 times. Be like, it's perfect. Send it, and then be like, no, it isn't. You know.
Yeah, and then it's gone into the world. Yeah.
Exactly, and you just put it out there, and you look like a dope. So you know.
But you know, it's funny because there's so many people who are very critical on that, and I'm the same as you. I'm dyslexic. I once did a video on Rhea and Charlotte, and Rhea is just a name that I can't see. I can't see how to spell it, and so the video went up, and Dom was like, "You've spelt Rhea completely wrong."
Funny, you say that now. When I'm trying to spell it in my head, when you said that, I can't do it either.
I can't even see it. You know, how many Y's are in it? How many? There's a H at the end. Is it EA or AH? Or I mean, it just, you know, but that's dyslexia. But I just find it fascinating that you work with so many numbers and letters and stuff like that, and when you make a mistake, like, it must be so difficult because you can't just step back and
no, you throw it away. You start again. You have to throw it away. Like because you know, like, so if you were to work in like Hex or something like that, it's just, you know, you'll be going through lines and lines of something you've done wrong, and if you're, you know, with dyslexia, as at least for me, sometimes going over stuff like that, especially text, you can't see where you've gone wrong all the time. So it's sometimes better to get rid of it, take a break, start again, and be like, right, this time you'll get it right. And then you're just more aware that you're going to make a mistake. Mm-hmm. So that sometimes helps you not make that same mistake.
Yeah.
You know, that's sort of the only way I can combat that. It's, you know, it's an odd thing because there's times where I don't notice it, and then it's like, oh no. You know, you'll look back at it and be like, oh, there it is. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's great to see that you're working through that and not letting that put you off. What is something that requires quite a lot of English skills.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading an interview with Tom Cruise, and he's dyslexic. You know, so I used to always be very, very inspired with that because he was, you know, I used to think, oh gosh, the amount of lines he has to memorize, and, you know, things he has to get right, and obviously under high pressure circumstances for loads of money, and he knocks it out of the park so often. So it's cool when you see somebody of that level dealing with something like that you completely understand, and then you're like, okay, well, sort of just take what he says, because I think in that interview he said sometimes he just stops what he's doing and he takes a break and starts again.
Yeah, I think it's about keeping at it as well, and not letting the punches knock you back too much, you know?
No. Yeah, totally.
So I put in my notes, let's talk about modern wrestling games. We've done a lot of talk about modern wrestling games, but what was there
specific about modern wrestling games you wanted to talk about?
Absolutely. So there's multiple games in development. I don't know if you know much about the other games that are just sort of not the 2K. Is there any that sort of interest you, or are you still playing other wrestling games?
I see everything. It's wrestling, so I see everything.
So are there any of them games that you're looking forward to? The Virtual Basement game or the Wrestleverse game that's coming out?
The Wrestleverse game is the retro one, right?
That's right, yeah.
Ryder and Hawkins just got on board with.
They did, yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that. I'm actually really looking forward to what 2K do next year. I think like that. I think, you know, while yes, it's cool to be having tons of other wrestling games, and I was delighted to see Fire Pro come back and come back in a big way. It was very successful from what I understand.
It's got some big names in it as well, especially with the
New Japan. They really did.
And they also had some great talent in New Japan at that time as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, like I think that's what's sorely missed. They need more wrestling games from other promotions. You know, we need AEW to come out with a video game. We need New Japan to have, you know, I know they wouldn't do a yearly video game, but even if they do like every 2-year game or something like that, it'd be great to have. Mm-hmm. You know, because I think 2K would then look at that and then be like, okay, so here aren't like tiny offshoot games. Here's something that's
here's some
really
real competition
to us. Yeah, exactly. And here's how they're doing wrestling, which maybe they didn't think about sort of how they approached it.
Yeah.
You know, and that would be awesome. But
and
yeah,
that doesn't mean that every one of them would be a success, but at some
really
point,
doesn't.
you know, because we all say, oh, there's a difference, it's going to be great, and it might not be what we're looking for.
Well, I mean, the TNA game was a major example of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because I mean, it came out at a year when WWE's game was very weak, and you know, the TNA game came, and I think it was missing so many basic features. Like, I don't think you could even defend championships in just regular exhibition matches.
No.
And it was like, right, well, for people that simulate wrestling like a sport, like I do, that's a huge get. So, yeah, just you know, but we need them. We need them to come out, and then we need them to try, because I don't know. I think
we need competition and not a monopoly.
Absolutely. What do you think about if the AEW game happens, which I'm sure it will at some point? What do you think about them doing sort of an updated Aki engine, like sort of No Mercy style game? Do you think that'll fly in this generation, or do you think it will only appeal to sort of retro gaming fans?
I think people are looking for a change. I think the fascinating thing about AEW as a company is they've got a lot of people that are really into games, but not like... So WWE have people that are into games. If you look at Up, Up, Down, Down, they're into the games, but they have absolutely nothing to do with the wrestling games that are produced, apart from promoting it.
I mean, I think the biggest striking thing that I think 2K should have taken away from something like Up, Up, Down, Down is, I can't remember the year that channel started. They were all playing the UFC game, and they would constantly play it. Like the New Day, the Usos, I think Reigns, whole bunch of people were just addicted with it. Miz was on there playing that game.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, when then the 2K game of that year, the WWE game came out, and I think they played it for like a couple of episodes, maybe not even that. And it's like, well, there's a big thing, you know, like these people love wrestling. Yeah, there's your indicator that something is wrong. And that was a good couple of years ago. I'm like, that's when you should be like, right, we need to change what we're doing now, because they look at them, they're going crazy over the UFC game. It's getting loads of views. The video is getting loads of views, and probably people that didn't play that UFC game might have gone and picked that up because it looks so fun, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a clear indicator. I mean, imagine if that was, I don't know, I think 2K16 or 17 when that came out. Imagine if that was them being addicted to that game, and they were playing that all the time.
This promotion, and not only that, 2K have like this incredible machine behind them, which has years and years of history, and
they have far more funds than THQ ever did.
Absolutely. You know, and I'm just a little fed up of it. So the thing that I'm excited about with AEW is you've got people high up in management there, like Kenny Omega, and he's not just like the New Day, because New Day are ultimately talent, on-air talent, and have nothing to do with the management of the product, apart from perhaps potentially themselves. That's not the case in AEW. You've got people who are really sort of working behind the scenes, and I'm sure that people like Omega would be interested in getting involved in helping develop it and at least giving it his opinions. And I think sometimes wrestling companies need to listen to wrestling fans' opinions, and the more of that we get, instead of just making a game that they think is right. Another great example in AEW is Aubrey Edwards, who is the referee. She used to be a game developer herself. So you've got all this talent in there. Use that and create something that we are lacking at the minute in the big AAA game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that definitely needs to happen. I think also the biggest takeaway that they could have from, I think, 2K20 is make it entirely different to what they're doing. You know, the review, I think the critics and the reviewers of that series has always been, you know, oh, it plays the same, it does this, it does that, and you know, they have a point, but then obviously you don't want to alienate fans that have been with that franchise, you know, since the beginning, right? So like even people that have jumped on it at 2K15 or whenever, you know, they know that is how their 2K plays. But with AEW, they have the best opportunity because no one has played an AEW game yet.
Absolutely.
So whatever they make, that's how that first one, if it's great, that's how it plays. So they can be as different as they want. And that's why I think, like, I like the idea of them being like, oh, we're huge fans of No Mercy and we'll do that. But I really hope whatever it turns out to be, it's more than just sort of an updated Aki Engine No Mercy game. I would prefer it if it's, just something fresh.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, I would love I've got a video in the works at the moment, which is people were asking me, oh, well, how would you design the next WWE 2K game? And I obviously I play a lot of games, wrestling games offline. Like, so I'm big in Universe and things like that.
Yeah.
But I understand that there's a ton of people that play online, and even though that's a feature, I never interact with it. Instead of being like, okay, well, I don't need to do a video on the online component because I don't play that. No, that's silly. You're making a game for so many people, and look at the reason as to why you don't play it. So I was like, okay, well then I would make two modes. I would make a competitive mode where you have your rankings and you have championships and you have you have different leaderboards and things they already have.
Yeah.
But I would also make a cooperative mode where basically you and the guy who are playing against each other at the start of the match, only on your screen and theirs, it will come up who is winning the match. Okay. And instead, the two of you compete to have the best match possible. People can spectate, people can rate, and you can have that on a leaderboard, on a separate leaderboard, as to who is having the best matches.
As opposed to with the ups and downs and flows, as opposed to, because 2K implemented something similar with the star thing, but all that was do a move and it fills up the bar.
Yeah, exactly. Which is not it's not as interactive as I suppose I'm proposing, because I'm sort of.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. Yeah, because what I guess you kind of like how fighting games do it, where a lot of you have people watching the match itself and they can rate as the match is going on.
Mm-hmm.
So you will get an overall rating at the end, but you'll get, like, say for near falls, for certain spots, for things like that, people can rate while the match is happening as well if they tune in. So it's a lot more interactive rather than just, okay, do a move, get a star, and then whoever wins. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that's still the same thing as just competitive multiplayer. It's not really co-op, is it?
No.
Whereas I think, like, if you gave people the option of, okay, you're not playing to win, you're playing to win people over.
It's a fascinating idea, because that's what wrestling is about at its core.
Yeah.
And it's about playing it from the wrestler's side and having that ebb and flow in the match. So it's not about finishing off your opponent as quickly as you can. It's about having an ebb and a flow in a match and how that works and how you can get the crowd built up by a submission and how long you hold on that submission and stuff like that.
And I also think with two people or more working together in that aspect, it would make it so much more interesting, because you'll have different people with different ideas and then trying to work that out in the confines of a match.
Yeah, and trying to communicate that between each other as well.
Exactly. So you've got, I know obviously but that, like I said, that doesn't replace a traditional sort of competitive online mode. But as a complementary feature, that would be something I would be interested in. Because I'd be interested in to see how people did it. Because you're going to get people like me who take that very seriously and would do it. But then obviously you're going to have people really messing around on that too, and all the combinations of that could be a lot of fun.
It's an interesting concept, man. It's a very interesting concept. So another feature that seems to be missing from the 2K series for a long time now, the general manager mode.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk? So you've worked on some of the games that had that in with the latest SmackDown versus Raw. So what do you think about that being missing, and why is it missing?
Well, I mean, I thought it was crazy when they removed it in 2009 and there was nothing to replace it. They didn't have a universe mode. They didn't have anything. And it was just a really bare bones game. That was the game. I remember a buddy of mine who was trying to get into wrestling at that point bought 2009 and was like, whoa, there's nothing here, because once you were finished with Road to WrestleMania, that was it. You had nothing to do. I think now that you have universe mode, I think the smart way to do it would be not make it a separate mode, because obviously, you're going to have relatively the same thing, but make it an optional feature within universe mode where, you can play as solely the booker, you can play as the wrestlers and the booker, or you can play as the wrestler and have the computer book you in situations.
Mm-hmm.
I think all those, if you go from it at that angle with sort of those at least 3 options, while retaining the best things of general manager mode, which is popularity, ratings, things like that. And then maybe adding the interactive www.com on top of the statistics modes that they have in universe could be really, really valuable. If done right, you could end up having sort of a almost as good a thing as sort of a create your own season. If you pair that with, say, some of the cutscenes that you had in the the options you had in Raw 2 season mode. I don't know if you played Raw 2.
I don't think so.
Right. Well, in that game, it was kind of like you start a season, but for the entire match card, you have things you can do. So you can set up an ambush. You can go backstage and encourage one of your stablemates. You can talk to another superstar. You can antagonize another superstar. You can have a backstage interview, and so on and so forth. If the champions arrive, there'll be a limo parking up, and then the champion will get out. I think all these things could be melded perfectly into one mode.
Yeah.
And then you just have toggle options. Like, say, if somebody goes, well, I don't want all this extra stuff from Raw 2, turn it off.
I don't want to handle
someone's
money.
Like, I don't want to be rated. I don't want anything. I just want straight up plain universe. Fine, turn that stuff off.
Yeah.
Or if you want basic general manager mode, you don't want any cutscenes or anything, turn all that stuff off.
Yeah.
But I think, it has to be one mode. And I think you have to make it sort of a centerpiece of your game. It has to be, right, this is the franchise mode. It's probably what it should be called, is franchise mode.
Probably, yeah. I mean, that's what other sports games call it.
Well, exactly, yeah. So I think that was what GM mode was initially intended to be. That was because I'm doing the SmackDown versus Raw 2006 rebuild at the moment. I'm obviously writing stuff for the episode. And I have I'm looking over all the old GM mode interviews when they first implemented it and what the ideas were behind it.
All right, okay.
It was very much, ironically, molded off of what the 2K series games were doing with their sports games.
Yeah, with the baseball, I would assume, and the Madden.
Yeah, so you think they're now with 2K, they could do this. They could bring this to fruition. They could go back and be like, right, well, here's what we have as a document for universe. Here's the fun stuff of GM mode. Here's some other stuff we could add on top of it to make it new. Put it together.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the most shocking thing about it is in its most basic form, a GM mode is a really easy mode to write that gets a lot of longevity. I mean, basically, it's spreadsheets that are taking a load of values and rating your decisions based on them values and on whatever it is. It seems like, and then put a pretty UI on it. I mean,
well, exactly. It's not. It's not difficult, and it's not going to break the bank either, budget-wise.
It's a couple of people working on it, as opposed to a bit like with the sort of modern games. They sort of cut out a lot of the story stuff and all these sort of special story things. I'm like, you could have a writer write in 3 stories for The Undertaker in one day, 3 stories for Kalisto in one day, 3 stories for Aiden English, what have you, and then just put them into the game. And it'd give it so much more of a feeling of life around it all, You
could. I mean, I think even when you look at like sort of things they had in universe mode, like I remember one of their big features that were discovered in, I think, was it 2017, where they're like, oh, we're not doing a showcase this year because we're going to focus on universe mode, was when they had the promo system. And I think if certain people did promos, they would hit their finisher at the end. So like Cena would AA someone, or Austin would stunner someone, something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, then for the last 3 years, why didn't you lean into that more and then get it to, right, we've done maybe 20% of the roster with that. Now we've done 50. Now we've done 70 until the entire roster has got that, because those little touches make the mode last so much longer.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, I mean, think about this. You don't want sort of The Rock coming out and waving at people,
No.
And you don't want sort of, at the same time, you wouldn't want, well, maybe now you would, but you wouldn't want Bailey coming out at that point when she had long hair and hadn't turned yet.
And stabbing the Bailey buddies.
Exactly. So, or there not being any Bailey buddies, and there being no sort of her raising her hands in the air or anything when she comes out. Instead, she's just doing sort of a very generic walk down and sort of a very, very generic thing. I'm like, there's so much stuff that would take probably about 10, 15 minutes to animate at best, and it just having those people do their authentic things on the ramp, let alone on the turnbuckles and then hitting their finish in the ring.
Yeah.
Had so much more longevity to Universe,
and personality.
I mean, I can't believe that they've gone so long with Universe mode now, and it's still nowhere near where it should have been. No. Like that really should have been there, because I think had they got Universe mode right, and it had ratings and spreadsheets and things like that, like it should have. No one would be even talking about GM mode. No. The reason they're talking about it is because Universe mode has not lived up to it and has been relatively a rehash of the same thing for the past 5-6 years.
It's not satisfied in the way that they wanted it to. Interesting. For you, quick question: what are the most important elements to throw into a wrestling game?
I'm gonna say, for the first thing, it's got to be fun. While I like simulated games and things like that, I go back to something like even 2006. You have cool things like the sleeper hold system, the 10 count system where you both get knocked down, the ref counts to 10. You have a lot of cool wrestling stuff in, and the wrestling feels really good. But if someone who wasn't into wrestling picks up and plays that game, it's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing missing, because what a lot of people don't realize, especially I think people that are new to working on those games, is that series was such a massive seller back in the day. Like, it wasn't just wrestling fans buying that; it was just people who had it for pick up and play and couch play and co-op play and tons of fun with friends. And I think that's something they really need to go back to. They need to look at it and be like, right, it can be sim, but we have to make it still snappy enough and fast enough that somebody new can pick up and play this and not think it's a chore. You know?
Yeah.
They need to do that. I think for longevity's sake, you need to have whoever's on your roster, you have that license. It is your responsibility that the superstars represented in that, the women represented in that, the legends represented in that, have the accurate movesets that they need, with no exceptions. There shouldn't be a like, oh well, we put this guy in the game, but like most of his moves aren't there. But you've got his model, you can make do. It's like, no, that should be a real thing.
Yep.
Because then again, that some people will just play exhibition with these games for a full year if the wrestlers they like are accurate to TB.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then thirdly, I think they need to really figure out what their I don't want to say career mode, but what their main feature mode is. Like SmackDown 2 to SmackDown, well, SmackDown 1 even, to Here Comes the Pain, it was the season. Then from 2006 to 2008, while the season was there, the GM mode was sort of the franchise mode.
Yeah.
Then for a while it was Universe and Showcase, and then but now it's like, okay, what is it? Because you're doing these what do they call them now? Is it the My Career? Is that what they call it?
My Player, I believe.
My Player, right?
Tried to do a series of that on the channel. It was hard work.
Yeah, and I just think think about the money that's gone into that, because there's a lot of VO in that, right?
A lot, yeah, a lot.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, is that really best
necessary? Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree.
Like, what is your franchise mode? What are people asking for? And instead, if you took all that money and were like, okay, we're gonna maybe even scrap Universe mode and take the best bits of Universe mode and implement that into GM mode, even if you don't do it in reverse, and say, right, this is our franchise mode. Wouldn't that be better than My Player, which nothing against people that enjoy those modes, but I'm sure for every person that enjoys that, there are like maybe 10 that don't even want to interact with the creator wrestler interface, let alone, you know, play through a long, I guess, made up story.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you brought up earlier as well about the fact that they're spending this time on bringing people in and doing voiceovers, yet they're not spending this time to do motion capture with them.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a big thing. I think it's far better spent time getting your motion capture in, which is going to have the player playing a lot longer than they are with this. You know, I'd say those my player modes maybe you can run through them in like 2 days, right, max?
Yeah, you could do, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, there's not much longevity in those in comparison.
No.
So, yeah, I think that's, they just need to figure out what are we centering this game around. Maybe pull back on certain things. So, you know, if they're like, okay, we want to go deep in making a GM mode or making universe what it should be, but we don't have the time to make a my player, then scrap it. Be like, okay, we will center the game around this, and then when we have more time the following year, we'll probably try and implement something like that back in.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, because right now there's too many things in there that are just unsatisfactory.
Agreed. But who knows what we'll get this year with Battlegrounds? We'll see if that brings some arcadey fun, or if it's just. I mean,
with Battlegrounds, like, what did you guys think of that when you saw it?
Dom didn't like it. Dom thought it looked like a mobile game. Which is a fair point, completely. Yep. I think I thought it was a good thing because I think it'll be fresh, and I just need something that's not another 2K game at the minute, you know. So I'm quite optimistic about it. Whether it will be. I think.
Keep in mind, though, I'm pretty sure that had 2K21 not been cancelled, Battlegrounds was still happening and probably going to release this summer instead of the fall.
Yes, so they've been working on it for 2 years anyway, haven't they? Already?
Yeah, so I think like this would have been sort of similar to WWE All-Stars release.
Yes, you know, or NBA Playgrounds, which I've never played.
Yeah, me neither. But yeah, I think it would probably be similar to those games where it's like, okay, this is a complimentary game to tie you over right before our franchise annual game.
Yeah, and but the fact that did well to the point where it spawned a sequel, and I know that they were trying to push microtransactions and stuff like that, which is a whole different story, a whole different thing to get into. But you know, I think that obviously there's a market for that, and so we'll see. I'm looking forward to picking it up if it's any good.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the best thing you can say about Battlegrounds right now is, look, it is something completely fresh. So, you know, maybe don't rip on that because, you know, it might lead to better things in the future.
Yeah, it'd be really hypocritical of us all to say we need something different and then
here you go, and then you're like, set it on fire, it's terrible.
Exactly. Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I know that we sort of...
Wonderful talking to you.
Gone all over the place, but look, your channel is doing really great. It's ScottJay01. There is a link to it in the description down below. Go check it out. There's so much more information that goes a lot deeper into the individual games, but I just wanted to sort of get you on here to talk a little bit more about you, as well as overall opinions, I suppose.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry this interview went all over the place.
Dude, I you know, we're just having a chat. It's all good. Where can people find you? Because it's not just the YouTube channel. There's Patreon as well.
Right. So yeah, obviously YouTube, ScottJay01, Twitter, ScottJay01, and Patreon, if you want to support what I do, is patreon.com/ScottJay01, and then that's it.
Yeah, what I'd suggest people do, go watch the videos because they're excellent, and then you'll decide if that's something that you want to invest in or not.
Especially during this, you know, especially during this time frame, please don't, you know, just go watch all the videos. You know, they're free. You know, just have as much fun as you want on that.
Well, I've had a lot of fun, and I'm really grateful to have you here. So
I'm grateful for this. Thank you so much.
No worries, my friend. So yeah, like and support this video by subscribing to the channel. And until next time, keep it GAHY gay.
Take care, guys.